All ACC teams came out yesterday. Which Syracuse players made the cut?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome everyone into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the ACC recently released their all-conference selections, award winners, and Syracuse was pretty well represented in it. And I thought perhaps there should have been a little bit more hardware given out for this team, but nevertheless, definitely a step in the right direction with the amount of orange that was represented on those all-conference teams. We're going to get all into that. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. So, all ACC teams came out yesterday, as well as award winners. And Syracuse, as I said, pretty well represented in that group. Judah Mintz let's start with him. He was selected to be second team All-ACC. So congratulations to the guard. Now, he didn't really like it. He kind of addressed it on Twitter with a couple laughing emojis, and we'll get all into that. But hey, definitely a step in the right direction. Last year, Mintz was an honorable mention for the conference teams, and this year he takes that step up and is now a second team All-ACC member. Maliq Brown made all defensive first team. Wow, congratulations to Maliq Brown. We're going to talk about that as well. But first, let's start with Judah Mintz. The All-ACC first team was R.J. Davis, P.J. Hall, Kyle Filipowski, Hunter Sallis, and Blake Hinson. Those were the five that made the first team All-ACC. Those were the five. So Judah made the second team, along with Armando Bacot, Reese Beekman himself, Norchad Omier, and Quentin Post. Now, I know Judah didn't like that. Maybe he felt a little bit disrespected by being second team. But I happen to agree with the voters on this one. I agree with them. It's not me being a hater. I'm not trying to hate on Judah Mintz. But there can only be 5 players selected to this team. There can only be 5. And when you have to factor in that R.J. Davis is the ACC Player of the Year. Okay, so he's going to get a spot. P.J. Hall and Kyle Filipowski are big men, right? Hinson's a guard / forward. So then it really comes down to Hunter Sallis. It's either Hunter Sallis or Judah Mintz for that last spot. Not to mention Reese Beekman, who also didn't make it, who's one of the best players or one of the best defensive players in the conference. He made all defensive first team, and he was defensive player of the year. It's close, and you can certainly make the argument that Judah Mintz deserved to be on the first team, right? He led the team in scoring again. You can argue he's more valuable to his team than anyone else in the conference. You can make that argument. He's more valuable to his team than anyone else in the conference. But Hunter Sallis might just be a better player. They both score the ball a lot, but the difference between Sallis and Mintz is that Sallis is a better shooter. Sallis shoots over 40% from deep. Mintz shoots about 30%. To me, that matters. And those are the little things that distinguish being first team and being second team. And not to mention, Wake Forest is in a better position than Syracuse. And part of what goes into the selection process is how your team does, whether it's right or wrong. That's how part of the selection goes. And Wake Forest is in a better position right now to make the NCAA tournament than Syracuse is. And so by default, it's almost this inner bias. The team is better, then the player should get the higher marks. It's kind of like if you want to compare it to the NFL, the best teams have the most Pro Bowlers, right? You don't see the worst teams with a bunch of Pro Bowlers. And people will complain, be like, well, this player deserved it. Well, they're on a bad team, so they don't necessarily get that benefit of the doubt. It's kind of what happens here. I know Wake and Syracuse are kind of comparable, but it's similar principles. So at the end of the day, I agree with Judah Mintz being on the second team. And I think that is a huge step up for him from being honorable mention to the second team. And next year, if he stays, perhaps this is motivation to be on the first team next year, to make All-ACC first team, perhaps even be the conference player of the year, because I believe he has that upside. But I think when we're talking about for the 2023-24 season, Judah Mintz was properly selected onto the second team. Okay, so that's it with Judah Mintz. Let's go to Maliq Brown, who was all defensive first team. All defensive first team for Maliq Brown, which is unbelievable. Because Maliq Brown was asked to do probably take on the biggest role of anyone for Syracuse when Naheem McLeod went down. See, a lot of players were playing a little out of position, and we've discussed that. Maliq Brown at 6'8" was asked to play center. And he's 6'8". Not nearly big enough to be a center. And this guy still made it. He still made it. He is the first center in the history of the conference to lead in steals per game. That's right. Let me repeat that. Maliq Brown, a center, is the first player in ACC history to lead the conference in steals per game. Talk about being all defensive first team. I got no problems with that. None. So, congratulations to Maliq Brown, who set history this season and was properly selected to be on the All-ACC defensive first team. Pretty remarkable stuff. Leading the entire conference in steals as a center. I guess in that case it works to his benefit that he's 6'8", because if he's 7 foot, I don't think he does it. But I think Maliq Brown, what you can take away from this is that he is an integral part to this team, and he is a player that I think Syracuse definitely needs to keep for next season. They need to find a way to have him. And if you're talking about next year, he could maybe be a defensive stopper off the bench, because remember, Donnie Freeman is coming in. You assuming he's the starting power forward. And if Syracuse gets a starting center, because while I love Maliq Brown, he's a great defensive player, I think he's best playing power forward than playing center. And they bring in a legitimate center in the portal. Maliq Brown comes off the bench. And that he might be the best bench player on the team next season. And that's not to say he can't start, but I think that would be the most ideal role for him as a defensive stopper who can come in and also has starting caliber upside, who can give you 12 points and 10 rebounds on any given night. So Mintz and Brown are the only players who made the all-conference teams. J.J. Starling was notably not an honorable mention, which I thought would have been possible, but he was not selected, probably because he struggled for the first half of the year. But if he had played like he did down the stretch, he would have at least probably made the the honorable mention team, just not the first or second team. So those are the all-conference selections with Syracuse. And coming up, we're going to talk about the near award winners because nobody on Syracuse won an award, but they came close. It was Adrian Autry and Quadir Copeland. We're going to talk about them right after this. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wondered what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive, Google built in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from a full-size SUV, and that's also included in Nissan's incredible lineup. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and we just talked about the All-ACC selections for Syracuse, which was Judah Mintz making the second team all-conference and Maliq Brown making the first team all-defensive team. Now, time to talk about some of the near award winners. They nearly won, didn't quite take it home. We're going to start with the sixth man of the year. Quadir Copeland finished second on the ballot for sixth man of the year with 20 votes. Ishmael Leggett from Pitt won it with 33 votes. Guys, this is straight up lunacy. It's straight up lunacy. The sixth man of the year might be the dumbest award ever. I hate it. You know why? Guess how many games Quadir Copeland started this season? Guess how many he started? Take a guess. In your head. How many did he start? Well, I'll give you the answer now. He started one game. All season, Quadir Copeland started one game. He played 31, and he only started one. That's it. That's all Quadir Copeland did. So that, to me, qualifies as being a sixth man of the year nominee. But the winner from Pitt, Ishmael Leggett, played 30 games this season and started 14 of them. He started nearly half of the games he played in, and he got sixth man of the year. I'm not saying that Leggett is a bad player and that he's not deserving of some sort of recognition, but how is that sixth man of the year? He started half the team's games. Half. That should just take you out by default. You're not the sixth man if you start half. And I know Pitt fans might come at me and say, "Oh, you don't watch the Pitt games. He came off the bench and was a spark plug better than Quadir Copeland." Not denying that. Had he started one game like Quadir Copeland, we can definitely have a conversation about him being sixth man of the year. But Quadir Copeland deserved that award because he's actually the true sixth man. This is what drives me nuts about the award. How can you start half of your team's games? Quadir Copeland started one. He started one. Not to mention, Quadir Copeland played 22 minutes a game. Copeland played 22 minutes, and Leggett played 29 minutes a game. So Leggett played about 7 more minutes a game than Copeland and started about half of his team's games. That's not a sixth man. That is not how a sixth man of the award should work. So this is one that I really disagree with the public on this one. Not the public, the voters. I strongly disagree with the voters on this one. Quadir Copeland is the sixth man of the year in my book. I'm fair with Judah Mintz. I believe that he was truly should have been, he was a second team member, not quite yet first team. Maliq Brown, I think we can all agree, leading the conference in steals as a center for the first time in history. Yeah, that gets you a spot on the defensive first team. But Quadir Copeland not being sixth man of the year is quite frankly ridiculous. When he started one game, played 22 minutes, and the other guy played 29 minutes and started 14 of 30 games. I'm sorry, you're not a sixth man. Now, the other close award winner for Syracuse was Adrian Autry for Coach of the Year. He got 6 votes for it. He finished third. Hubert Davis ended up taking home the award with 49 votes. And here's the thing. I know people might say, well, Adrian Autry deserved Coach of the Year because Syracuse overachieved. And I do not deny you on that. Syracuse overachieved, especially when you look at, I believe, Ken Palm's initial preseason expectations, which were garbage to begin with. But regardless, I think I agree with the voters here on Coach Autry. As much as I think he's done a really good job with this team, and when the season ends, I'll reevaluate his grade, which I think I'm going to make it a little higher than a B when I first gave it to him. The team right now is not in position to make the NCAA tournament. And I think this was just a bad year overall for selecting a Coach of the Year. I think it was just because what was the team that really overachieved to the point where they totally deserved it? I don't know. Because Syracuse did overachieve, but they're still not really projected to make the field. So Hubert Davis kind of won by default. It was kind of a bad year for Coach of the Year because they gave it to the guy who was the coach of the best team in the conference. That's what they did. And in this type of year, I can see that working out. Now, had Syracuse been in position to make the tournament or had finished maybe like 5th in the conference instead of 7th, we might be able to have a different conversation than what we're having right now. As good of a job as I think Coach Autry did, I don't think he should have been Coach of the Year, and I think the voters got it correct. Now, if you disagree with me on that, if you disagree with anything that I have said, please in the comments, let me know. Feel free to let me know. If you agree with me, tell me why you agree with me. I love when these selections come out because there's so many storylines from it. I think the main takeaway, though, is that there was a lot of orange, which is a good thing. Quadir Copeland, by the way, got an all-defensive vote or all-defensive player of the year vote. One of those two. I'm mixing it up, but there was a lot of orange. And I think that you're starting to see kind of a core and that they just need a little bit more, right? In this offseason, they just need a couple really good transfers maybe to come in. Hopefully not lose too many players. Judah staying would definitely be a nice bonus. I think they got the right man at the helm, leading the way in Adrian Autry. There's a lot to like here. And now the ACC tournament is coming. And, well, there's a storyline that I want to talk about that's not necessarily about Syracuse, but it kind of relates to them. It's about Kyle Filipowski and his trip against North Carolina, because we need to have a conversation about this together, because I think it's ridiculous the way it's being handled right now. So let's get right to it after this. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And hey, you want to bet on Syracuse here? Let's talk about the ACC tournament for a second. Can this team really be Cinderella and actually make March Madness? Well, their odds to win the ACC tournament on FanDuel right now are sitting at plus 5,500. So perhaps Judah Mintz, he can go on one of those 2011 Kemba Walker type runs. Maybe he can do that. Chris Bell, we know he can get hot from deep and perhaps steal a game or two in this tournament. And SU also has a couple of defensive stoppers. We talked about Maliq Brown, Quadir, Copeland also being represented. I'm just saying, plus 5,500, pretty good odds. And you can go to FanDuel to bet that right now on Syracuse. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Hello, everyone, and welcome back into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. We've talked extensively about the orange that was represented on the conference selection teams and the Nero Award winners and how Quadir Copeland should have been sixth man of the year, but Adrian Autry not getting coach of the year. That's okay in my book. But now we're going to talk about a little bit of a unique situation here because this is Locked On Syracuse, and we don't necessarily touch other teams. But I think we need to talk about Kyle Filipowski here for a second because it does relate to Syracuse. It does. The reason it relates is there's a couple reasons. Number one, in the ACC tournament, the way the bracket shapes out, if Syracuse wins on Wednesday, they will play Duke on Thursday. Okay? They will play Duke on Thursday if they win. Okay? The other reason is because not too long ago, just a few years ago, in the conference tournament, Buddy Boeheim made a heat of the moment type mistake where he kind of jabbed, punched, armed, kind of a weird motion like this, right? He just went, For those that are watching or for those that are listening, I'm kind of holding out my right arm and just pushing it in, like kind of mimicking what Buddy Boeheim did. Right into a guy's chest on Florida State. He made a mistake. It was a dirty play. He shouldn't have done it. But you know what he did afterwards? He owned up to it. He owned up to the mistake. And even then, he was suspended for a game. He was suspended for a game in the ACC tournament. Remember, in the conference tournament, and in March Madness, you have to do maybe a little bit more to get suspended for a game. The act has to be a little bit extra than normal because the stakes are higher and people at the end of the day want to see the best players on the floor. So they don't want to suspend players here. Like the public doesn't want Kyle Filipowski to be suspended just to be suspended, right? Buddy Boeheim, we didn't want him to be suspended just for pure watching, right? But at the end of the day, his act was an act that he deserved to be suspended. He did. He got one game. And that act was the final real play of his career. That's kind of how he went out, Buddy Boeheim. And it was a sad way to go out in the heat of a moment type mistake. And I think we can all sympathize with getting frustrated and just making a dirty play. For those that have played sports, it's happened a bunch of times and we understand it. But to me, it's all about what you do afterwards. Kyle Filipowski in the Duke, North Carolina game trips a UNC player and it appears to be on purpose. Appears to be on purpose. Okay. And everyone has seen it. If you haven't, you can go check it out. He trips the UNC player. UNC player falls down. Kyle Filipowski says afterwards that basically denying that it was on purpose at all. He essentially said that he didn't know how he tripped him, even though if you watch the video, you can see him turning his head and looking at the UNC player. And I said on Twitter, it's not the most egregious act I've ever seen on the floor. It's not. It's not. But you know what it is? You know what? It's not the most egregious act. But at the end of the day, you know what's so much worse is the fact that he denied it. I think we can all sit here and agree that when a player in a rivalry game makes a mistake in the heat of a moment, he shouldn't have done it. It happens. Fine. We can forgive you on that. Or at least I can. But just sitting here denying it, like casual, like nonchalant, like you didn't mean to trip the guy. I mean, come on, Kyle. You're better than that. You're a better human being than that. And I believe that he needs to be suspended. And if he is suspended, it would be for the Syracuse game. He should not be allowed to touch the floor for the Syracuse game. And I'm not asking for the kitchen sink here. I'm asking for one game. And I want to sound as unbiased as possible here because, yeah, they're playing against Syracuse. I just want to let people know I don't care who they would be playing in their next matchup. If they're playing North Carolina State or somehow Louisville, he should be suspended too. I don't care who Duke is going to play for their next game. It's probably going to be Syracuse, which would benefit. It would benefit us greatly if he's not on the floor. He was a first-team All-ACC player, and he deserved it. But it is so much worse to act like a jerk and pretend that it was just nah, I didn't see him, and yeah, I didn't mean to stick my leg out while getting up. No. Let this be a lesson. You make a mistake, own up to the mistake. Take accountability. What I did was wrong. I should not have tripped the North Carolina player. I got caught up in the heat of the moment because that's what Buddy Boeheim did. Buddy Boeheim cried. He knew he shouldn't have done it. And his coach, even Coach Boeheim, his dad came out and said, Buddy deserved to be punished. He deserved to be suspended. He was wrong. Buddy Boeheim was in the wrong. And guess what? Everyone forgives him. You take accountability, you take your punishment, and we can move on. Kyle Filipowski may or may not be suspended, but the bottom line is he's a jerk, and he should not be on the floor when Syracuse hopefully takes on Duke on Thursday. That's my rant about the whole Kyle Filipowski situation. I know it's a little bit unique, and it's not necessarily Syracuse. You know, this is Locked On Syracuse, not Locked On Blue Devils, not Locked On Tar Heels. I understand that. But I just felt like it needed to be addressed because it kind of relates to Syracuse. So forgive me for including this in the show today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you guys liked it, click that like button. And hey, if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you can know right away when the next show is coming out here. There's a lot of content to look forward to here with this conference tournament. Syracuse hopefully has a big run in them. We're going to be back on Wednesday to talk about it.